You keep asking why life feels like a loop, why the same pain keeps finding you in new disguises, why every time you think you've moved on, the same feeling drags you back. It isn't chance, it isn't fate, it's repetition. A pattern you haven't yet understood. You tell yourself you've learned the lesson. You've read the words, said the affirmations, promised to do better. And still, the same story plays again. Only louder, sharper, more personal. Because the psyche doesn't care about your promises. It cares about truth. There is an internal logic to your suffering, a design hidden beneath the chaos. Every emotion you avoid, every truth you suppress, every part of yourself you exile, they all circle back, demanding to be seen. Until you face them, they become the architects of your reality. You think you're moving forward, but you're walking in circles, because what's unresolved always pulls you back to the beginning. Every unhealed pattern waits patiently, repeating itself through your choices, through the people you attract, through the silence you can't stand. You tell yourself you've changed, but the same triggers still own you. You tell yourself you've healed, but one word, one look, one reminder, and you're right back inside the old wound. This is not weakness. This is the psyche demanding recognition. You are being shown, again and again, what you've refused to understand. Because suffering, at its core, is not punishment. It's information. It's the signal that something essential remains unseen. And the harder you fight it, the deeper it buries itself. The more you distract yourself, the louder it becomes. Because the psyche does not give up. It will repeat the pain until you listen, until you turn inward, until you see the truth behind the noise. You do not escape suffering by running from it. You end it by understanding why it's there. Because pain, when understood, becomes awareness. And awareness, that is where freedom begins. This is the inner law. Simple, relentless. What you resist persists. Every time you push something away, you give it power. Every time you refuse to feel, you deepen the wound. Every time you deny what's real inside you, you become ruled by it. You think resistance is strength, that if you can hold yourself together, suppress the chaos, and keep control, you've won. But control is not mastery. It's fear disguised as discipline. You cannot overcome what you refuse to acknowledge, and you cannot heal what you keep calling not me. Because what you exclude doesn't disappear. It simply waits for another chance to surface. Repressed anger turns into exhaustion. Buried sadness becomes numbness. Unspoken truth turns into confusion. The more you tighten your grip, the more life slips through your fingers. The psyche does not forget what you want it to erase. It records every emotion you silence, every memory you rewrite, every truth you distort. And when the pressure becomes too much, it forces it all back to the surface, not to break you, but to remind you of what you've ignored. You see, the law doesn't punish. It corrects. It brings imbalance into awareness through repetition, through discomfort, through conflict. It brings you back to the very thing you keep running from, because that's where the unresolved truth lives. You can avoid people, situations, and places, but not yourself. You can outrun the past, but not your patterns, because what you resist follows you in silence, into your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, your reactions. The more you resist sadness, the deeper it roots itself. The more you resist fear, the stronger its grip becomes. Resistance feeds what it rejects. It's like pressing against a wall. The harder you push, the more it pushes back. Understanding this law changes everything. It turns suffering from a curse into a compass. It shows you that the tension you feel isn't there to destroy you. It's there to direct you. Every time you resist, life mirrors that resistance in front of you, until you stop fighting what is and begin to face what's within. When you finally stop running, when you stop saying, "Not this, not me," you realize that the pain was never the enemy. Your refusal to see it was. And the moment you let yourself see clearly, the pattern begins to dissolve. Because nothing that's truly faced needs to repeat itself. There is a part of you you've spent your whole life avoiding, the part that embarrasses you, the part you deny, defend against, and bury under masks of composure and control. That part is your shadow. The shadow is not evil. It's simply everything you decided you couldn't be. All the impulses you were told to suppress, all the emotions you labeled as wrong, all the truths you couldn't accept without shattering your image of yourself. You think you're hiding it, but the shadow doesn't stay hidden. It leaks through tone, silence, and reaction. It appears in the way you speak to others, in the judgments you make, in the habits that betray your logic. It shows itself in the people you can't stand, because they remind you of what you've disowned. You call it coincidence, but it's not. It's projection. You see in others what you refuse to see in yourself. You name it weakness in them because you can't bear to name it truth in you. And this is where suffering multiplies, because every attempt to stay pure, right, or in control forces another part of you into exile. You split yourself in two, the self you present and the self you repress, and the war between them never stops. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your equal. It is the half of your psyche you have not yet integrated. It holds the emotions you need to feel, the boundaries you need to reclaim, the power you've traded for approval. And until you face it, it will rule you from behind the curtain. You will call it fate, but it's you. Unacknowledged, unlived, unintegrated. You will sabotage your own peace and not know why. You will repeat what you claim to hate, because you haven't faced the part of you that creates it. Every person carries a shadow, but only those who have the courage to see it gain freedom from it. Seeing your darkness doesn't make you less. It makes you whole. Because you cannot claim your strength without meeting the parts of yourself you fear. To face the shadow is to look into the mirror and refuse to turn away. To say, yes, this too is me. To understand that your contradictions are not your flaw. They are your truth. You do not destroy the shadow. You bring it into the light of awareness. And in that act, it loses its power to dominate your life. Until then, it owns you. But once you face it, it becomes your ally, the source of clarity, depth, and authenticity. Because only by embracing what you've refused to see do you finally stop fighting yourself. There comes a point when running no longer works. Distraction stops numbing you. Silence turns heavy. And every escape route begins to close. That's when the confrontation begins. The moment life corners you, not to punish you, but to force you to meet the one person you've avoided the most. Yourself. You've spent years trying to fix the world outside you, trying to correct people, control outcomes, manage chaos. But every time you try to clean the mirror, you forget that the dirt is on your own reflection. You keep reaching outward, but the source of your suffering has always been inward. Facing yourself is the hardest thing you will ever do, because the truth doesn't flatter. It doesn't comfort. It strips away your illusions, exposes your motives, dismantles your stories. It shows you that much of what you called bad luck was really self-sabotage. that many of the battles you fought were against your own denial. Confrontation begins the moment you stop blaming. When you stop pointing outward and finally say, "It's me. It's always been me." Not with shame, but with honesty. Because responsibility is not guilt. It's power reclaimed. To turn toward yourself is to enter the unknown. To face the emotions you've locked away behind intellect, distraction, or pride. To feel them fully without turning them into stories or excuses. That is where transformation starts, not in knowing, but in feeling. There's no shortcut through this part. You will tremble. You will want to run back to comfort. You will want to tell yourself, "I've done enough." But if you turn away now, the pattern will start again. You must stand still. You must stay with the discomfort until it reveals its message. Because what you call pain is often truth knocking at the door of awareness. You may not like what you find. You may see parts of yourself you swore didn't exist. But the moment you see clearly, really see, something irreversible happens. The illusion loses its power. The false self begins to dissolve. And in its place, something real begins to emerge. A self no longer built on denial, but on understanding. This is the confrontation that frees you, not because it's easy, but because it's honest. You can only meet life to the depth that you've met yourself. And until you dare to face your own reflection without turning away, you'll keep mistaking your inner war for the world's injustice. The confrontation is not destruction. It's revelation. It's the moment the mask cracks, and the truth finally breathes. After the confrontation comes the silence, not the silence of avoidance, the silence of realization. The storm within begins to settle, not because everything is fixed, but because you've stopped pretending that it shouldn't exist. Integration begins here, when you no longer split yourself into acceptable and unacceptable, when you stop dividing your emotions into right and wrong, when you stop editing your own humanity to appear consistent or in control. Integration is the reconciliation of opposites. It's the moment you realize that light and darkness are not enemies. They are parts of one whole self, struggling to remember it is one. You've spent years building an image, the calm one, the strong one, the rational one, the good one. But behind that mask, the rest of you waited, the fragile, the angry, the uncertain, the emotional. And the more you denied those parts, the more fragmented you became. To integrate is to bring them home, to sit with each part and say, "You belong too." The anger that once frightened you, it carried your boundaries. The sadness you buried, it carried your depth. The fear you avoided, it carried your alertness. The part you called weakness, it carried your sensitivity, your humanity. Nothing inside you was ever the enemy. Only your resistance made it seem so. Integration is not about becoming better. It's about becoming whole. It's understanding that every rejected part was trying to protect you in its own misguided way. When you accept it, it softens. When you listen, it transforms. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of this part of me?" and start asking, "What is it trying to tell me?" Wholeness doesn't mean harmony without conflict. It means awareness within conflict. It means you no longer collapse into one side of yourself and deny the other. You can feel anger without cruelty. You can feel fear without paralysis. You can feel pain without shame. That's what maturity looks like. Not suppression, but integration. It's when you stop reacting automatically and start responding consciously. It's when the same situations that once broke you no longer define you, because you're no longer split against yourself. And in that unity, something extraordinary happens. Suffering loses its grip, because suffering feeds on division, on the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. When that gap closes, the energy once spent fighting yourself becomes strength. The pain once tied to avoidance becomes understanding. The confusion once born of denial becomes clarity. Integration is the quiet victory, not loud, not dramatic, but final. It's the end of the war within. And when the inner conflict ends, you begin to live, not as fragments, but as a whole human being. Avoidance is the most expensive habit you'll ever have. You think it costs you nothing, but it takes everything: your peace, your time, your growth, your truth. Every moment you avoid what hurts, you extend the contract of your suffering. Every time you look away, the lesson resets. Life doesn't punish, it repeats. Because what you refuse to learn, you are forced to live. Avoidance is seductive. It wears the mask of calm. It tells you, you're fine now. Don't stir the past, don't feel too much. But that calm isn't peace. It's suppression dressed as control. And suppression always collects its debt. The patterns you ignore don't disappear. They mature in silence. They wait for the perfect moment, a stress, a trigger, a loss. And then they surface again, demanding to be seen. Each time they return with more weight, more intensity, more urgency. Not to harm you, but to wake you up. The psyche does not tolerate incompletion. It will bring back the same emotion, the same lesson, through different people, different places, different seasons, until you finally stop running and face what you've denied. And so you live the same story with new characters. You repeat the same reactions, the same defenses, telling yourself, this time will be different. But it never is, because you are still the same unresolved self, living from the same unseen wound. Avoidance creates illusion. It tells you time will fix what awareness refuses to touch. But time doesn't heal denial. It amplifies it. The longer you postpone truth, the deeper it roots itself into your life. You can numb pain, but numbness is not freedom. You can distract yourself, but distraction is not healing. Avoidance buys temporary relief at the price of permanent confusion. You can't grow and hide at the same time. You can't evolve while protecting the very patterns that keep you small. Growth asks for confrontation. Awakening demands discomfort. Life keeps bringing you the same challenge, not because it's cruel, but because it refuses to let you live asleep. Each repetition is a chance, an invitation to see clearly what you've refused to learn. And until you accept that invitation, you will keep walking in circles, calling it fate. The moment you stop avoiding, everything changes. The energy once trapped in resistance becomes awareness. The fear that once froze you becomes focus. The pain that once haunted you becomes insight. Avoidance keeps you stuck in yesterday. Awareness brings you back to now, and only in the now can transformation begin. The loop ends the moment you decide to stop escaping, because avoidance doesn't protect you from pain, it protects pain from healing. Mastery is not about control. It's not about holding yourself together so tightly that nothing leaks through. It's not about suppressing emotion, silencing thought, or forcing calm. That isn't mastery. That's fear wearing the mask of discipline. True mastery is understanding. It's awareness so complete that reaction turns into response, and chaos no longer dictates your direction. Control is born of insecurity. It tries to dominate what it doesn't understand. It says, "If I can manage every detail, nothing can hurt me." But the truth is, life can't be managed, and neither can the unconscious. Understanding, however, changes everything. When you understand your patterns, you stop being owned by them. When you understand your emotions, they stop becoming explosions. When you understand your pain, it stops feeling like punishment and starts revealing its purpose. To master yourself is to see the mechanism behind your suffering, to recognize the automatic reactions, the mental loops, the emotional echoes of old wounds, and to no longer identify with them. It's when you can feel anger rise and not drown in it, when you can feel fear surface and still move forward, when you can see confusion appear and not lose yourself inside it. That is mastery, the ability to witness your inner storms without being pulled under. You don't conquer your mind by fighting it. You learn its language. You see how it protects, how it warns, how it defends. You realize the mind is not your enemy. It's a messenger carrying truths you've refused to hear. Mastery begins when you stop asking, "How do I make this stop?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me?" Because pain, when understood, transforms into insight, and insight frees you from the need to repeat. The difference between control and understanding is this: control resists. Understanding allows. Control tightens. Understanding releases. Control feeds fear. Understanding dissolves it. When you live with understanding, you no longer need to force outcomes. You begin to trust cause and effect within yourself. You know that awareness itself is corrective, that to see clearly is to begin to heal, and so mastery becomes quiet. Not a performance, not a posture, a presence. You don't need to prove strength when you understand yourself. You simply move with precision, calm, and intention. This is not about becoming untouchable. It's about becoming real. So deeply real that no emotion, no thought, no shadow can deceive you into thinking it defines who you are. Mastery is not control over life. It's alignment with truth. It's the ability to stand in the storm and see clearly, to meet conflict without collapsing, to meet yourself without defense. That is inner mastery, not perfection, but awareness, not dominance, but depth. And once you reach that point, suffering no longer owns you, because you've learned how to read it. Freedom doesn't arrive when life stops hurting. It arrives when pain stops ruling you. It's not the end of struggle. It's the end of running. You've spent years fighting what you feel, calling discomfort a sign of failure, calling emotion weakness, calling chaos proof that something is wrong. But nothing was wrong. You were simply alive. You thought freedom meant control. That if you could manage everything, your thoughts, your emotions, your past, you'd finally be safe. But safety built on avoidance is only another prison. Freedom begins where resistance ends. The more you fought reality, the heavier it became. Every truth you denied turned into weight. Every emotion you refused became a chain. And every time you tried to escape yourself, you built another wall, until one day the walls closed in, and you realized the thing you were hiding from was never out there. You cannot be free while you're at war with what is. Freedom doesn't mean you rise above the human experience. It means you stop being enslaved by your reaction to it. When you stop resisting, life doesn't magically become easy. It becomes real. You begin to see the world and yourself without distortion. You stop interpreting everything through fear, ego, and defense. You stop needing to fix, justify, or explain. You simply see, and in seeing, you understand. You'll keep suffering until you master this inner law. But the moment you do, everything changes. Because freedom isn't found in escape. It's found in meeting yourself, fully, and realizing there was never anything to escape from. You were never trapped by life. You were trapped by resistance. And the moment resistance ends, you finally begin to live.